The topics which we are going to discuss about are charge, then we'll be having Coulomb's law. Then, as Coulomb's law is valid only for point charges, so we will be discussing about point charges. Then we will look around the the Coulomb's law in vector form, in vector form, and lastly, we'll end the discussion by discussing about permittivity of the medium. Permittivity of the medium. So, without further delay, let's get started. So, we start with our first topic, which is charge. Charge. Now, first of all, what is a charge? Charge is basically a basic property of matter, or we can say that it is an intrinsic property of the matter. Now, what is an intrinsic property? Intrinsic property is basically a fundamental or a basic property. Just as we have mass. Mass is an intrinsic property or a fundamental property of matter. In the similar manner, charge is also a basic property of the matter. Just as we represent mass by a letter M, similarly we represent charge by the letter Q. Just as we have a SI unit of mass, the SI unit of mass is kilograms. In the similar manner, we have a SI unit of charge which is coulombs, and coulombs is represented by C. Just as mass is a scalar quantity, in the similar manner, charge is also a scalar quantity. Charge also does not have any direction. So these were some of the similarities between the two basic properties of matter, mass and the charge. About charge, one more thing we have is we have two types of charges. We have two types of charges. First charge is the positive charge and the second is the negative charge. So we have two type of charges, and relating to them we have the thing that is like charges repel each other. Like charges repel each other. That means if we have two positive charges or two negative charges, these two positive charges and these two negative charges will repel each other, while the unlike charges, that means, let us say we have one positive charge and another negative charge, so these unlike charges will attract each other. So this is a property relating to two types of charges. Now one more thing about mass and charge is that a body which is having a mass may or may not have any charge, but a body having a charge will definitely have a mass. Which is having a mass may have some charge on it or may not have some charge on it. But a body which is having a charge on it will definitely have a mass. For example, we have a neutron. We have a neutron. Neutron is a particle which is having zero charge, which is having no charge, but it has some or the other mass. And we have another particle, let us say it is a proton. Proton is having a mass also, and it is having a charge of plus e coulombs. So here we have this body neutron. It has mass but it does not have a charge. But this proton has charge and it has mass also. So every body which is having a charge will always have mass with it, but a body which is having a mass may or may not have charge with it. So this is about mass and charge. Now we move towards the difference between charge and the mass. What is the difference between mass of the particle and the charge of the particle? So first of all, mass is always a positive quantity. First difference is mass is always positive quantity. We always say that the mass of body is 30 kgs or 50 kgs, etc. We never say that the mass of body is minus 30 kgs. It is not desired. So mass is always a positive quantity, while charge can be positive or negative. There are two types of charges, positive or negative. A body can have plus 2 e coulombs of charge, or it may have minus 3 coulombs of charge. So this is one of the difference between mass and charge. Now we have the second difference. The second difference is mass varies with speed. Mass is a variable quantity. It varies with speed of the body. That means if the speed of the body changes, then its mass also changes. How it changes? With this relation, m is equal to m naught divided by 1 minus v square by c square under root, where v is the velocity of the particle or the speed of the particle, c is the velocity of light, and m naught is the rest mass of the particle, that means mass of the particle when the mass is at rest, and m is the mass of the particle when it is in motion. This manner, with the change in speed of the body, the mass of the body also changes according to this relation. While in case of charge is independent of speed. Charge is independent of speed. Now the next topic we have is Coulomb's law. Coulomb's law. Now, what does this Coulomb's law tells about? Coulomb's law basically deals with the interaction between the charges. It deals with the interaction between the charges. We saw that there are two types of charges, positive and negative charge. So the question arises, how will these charges interact with each other? Let us say we have two positive charges or two negative charges, or we may have a positive and a negative charge. How will these charges interact with each other? This is stated by Coulomb's law. One thing to note here is, here we are talking of point charges. Coulomb's law only deals with point charges. Now, what is a point charge? This we will be discussing later on. But first of all, Coulomb's law states that how much is the interaction between the charges. Now, what does this word interaction between the charges mean? Just as in case of we human beings, we interact with each other by talking to each other, by using some words and sentences. Similarly, how does charges interact? Interaction between charges implies that the charges attract each other or repel each other. That means the attraction or repulsion between the charges is basically the interaction between the charges. So for the Coulomb's law, let we have 2 point charges here. First of all, let us say we have this charge plus q1, and let me have another charge which is plus q2. We have taken both the positive charges here. These are the centers. These are the centers between the charges, and let us say the distance between the centers of these two charges is r. Now, because both these are like charges, so they will repel each other. Q1 will also repel Q2, and Q2 will in turn again repel Q1. So let us say Q1 repels Q2 in this direction. In right hand side, the Q1 will repel Q2, and Q2 will repel Q1. It will exert force on Q1 towards the left hand side. The two charges are repelling each other. That means both the charges are exerting force on each other. So this force which is exerted on 2 due to this first charge, it is written as F21. It is written as F21. F21 is the force which is exerted on second charge, that means Q2 charged by the Q1 charge. Now what is this force? The force which is exerted by second charge on the first charge, that is given as F12. That means F12 is the force exerted on charge Q1 due to charge Q2. R is the distance between centers of these two charges. Now, if we have this type of situation, what does Coulomb's law states? The force between the two charges or two or more charges, it cannot act along any arbitrary direction. The force between two charges will act only along the line joining the two charges. So this force F12 and F21, both of these will act only along this particular line which joins both the charges, which joins the centers of both the charges. So force between the two charges Or we can say that if a charge exerts a force on another charge, force exerted by one charge on the other charge will always be acting along the line joining both the charges, or we can say that along the line joining the centers of two charges. So the force F12 and F21 will always act along this line which is joining the centers of both the charges. There have been a possibility, let us say this is charge q2, so here is charge q1 can exert force on q2 along this direction or this direction or this direction. There are many possible directions, but Coulomb's law states that if q1 is exerting force on q2, then the force will be exerted only on in this direction, which is along the line joining both the charges. It cannot repel q2 in any arbitrary direction. So this was the first point stated by the Coulomb's law. Now the question arises whether these forces F12 and F21 are they same or they are different with each other. Does they depend upon the mass of Q1 and Q2, or they exert the Q1 and Q2 exert same force on each other? The Coulomb's law clarifies this. It says that the F21 is minus of F12. That means, what does this mean? This mathematical form means that the force between the two charges is equal in magnitude, but it is opposite in direction. This negative sign represents the direction part, that both the forces are exerted in different direction, in opposite directions. See, F12 is exerted in this direction while F21 is exerted towards right side. So the direction of exertion of both the forces is opposite, but their magnitude will be same. The amount of force which Q2 exerts on Q1 will be the same amount will be exerted by Q1 on the Q2. So that means the magnitude of F21, which is represented like this, it is same as magnitude of F12. Let us say this is F. So this is the second point which is clarified by Coulomb's law. The third thing which Coulomb's law states that the force between the two charges depends upon the magnitude of both the charges. It is directly proportional to Q1 and Q2. That means if we take big charges, then the force between both the charges will be larger. While if we take smaller charged particles, then both the charges will exert small force on each other. So this is about F directly proportional to Q1 and Q2. Now the question arises whether the force between these two charges depends upon this distance, the distance between or the separation between the charges. The answer is yes. Yes, the magnitude of the force between the two charges depends upon the separation between the two charges, and it depends like this: F is inversely proportional to R square. So that means this can be stated like this: if the distance between the two charges is increased, then the force between these charges will decrease. So if there is Q1, there is Q2, if we increase the distance between both the charges, then the force between the charges will decrease. While if both the charges are placed close to each other, then the force between them will be increased. There will be larger force between them if they are placed close as compared to when they are kept far. This can be understood by an analogy. We all have seen that we connect devices with Bluetooth. In that case, we have easily observed that if both the devices are placed close to each other, then the Bluetooth connection between them is very strong. But if we keep both the devices far apart from each other, then the connection between them becomes weak. Uh, in the similar manner, with distance, the force between the charges changes. So now, if we combine both of these things, first and second thing, we can say that F is basically the magnitude of force between both the charges. So F becomes K Q1 Q2 divided by R square. If we remove this proportionality sign, we will be applying this equal to sign and this constant K. So this is what the Coulomb's law states about the magnitude of force exerted by one charge on the other. Q1 and Q2, these are the magnitudes of these charges, the charges taken. And the R is the separation between the centers of these charges. While F is the force, F is basically the magnitude of force which is exerted by one charge on the other. Now, what is this K? K here is a constant, but it is not a universal constant. It is a constant, but it is not a universal constant. What does that mean? Universal constant means that a constant which has the same value in every medium. Universal constant is the one whose value does not change with change in medium. But here K depends upon the medium. K depends upon the medium through this relation K is equal to 1 upon 4 pi epsilon, where epsilon is the permittivity of the medium. Permittivity of the medium. Basically, K depends upon the medium through this property epsilon. As the medium changes, then the K also changes. This means if we are observing the value of K in oil, we will be getting a different value. If we are observing the value of K in mica, the value of K will be different. So the value of this constant K changes as we change the medium. Now here we can notice that K is K depends upon K and K depends upon epsilon. Epsilon is basically a property of medium. Here epsilon is permittivity. We will be talking about this in later part. So force depend upon K and K depends upon medium. So for example, if we have two charges Q1 and Q2 plus Q1 and plus Q2 and the distance between them is R, let us say we keep this arrangement in oil. Then in the next step, we keep this particular arrangement. We have the same magnitude of charges and we are keeping them at the same distance apart r. Now in mica. And then we are placing both these charges with the same magnitude and the same separation in, let us say, water. Now, how will the force between these will be affected? Let us say in oil, the force between the charges is F1. In mica, we observe that the force between the charges comes out to be F2. And in water, the force between the charges comes out to be the F3. Now, what about the magnitudes of these charges? What about the magnitude of these forces? Will these forces be different or same? Now, as we can see here that the force depends upon K and K depends upon medium. Here we have changed the medium. If the medium changes, then K will also change. K will change, then F will change. So here we can say that F1 is not equal to F2 and it is not equal to F3. F1, F2 and F3 will all be different because both of them, all three of them are depending upon K and the value of K will change as the medium changes. Hence, if we place the same magnitude of charges at the same distance apart in different mediums, then also the force between them will change because this force depends upon the medium of the medium in which both the charges are kept. Now, if we talk of air or free space or vacuum, air or free space or vacuum, in these media, the value of K, the value of K comes out to be 9 into 10 raised to power 9 Newton meter square per Coulomb square. Now, one thing we have noticed is that force is equal to K Q1 Q2 divided by R square. From here, we said that force is inversely proportional to R square. R is the separation between the two charges. We had these two charges Q1 and plus Q2. The distance between them is R. So, force is inversely proportional to R square. This particular thing gives us the amount with which force depends upon the separation between the charges. We know that if the charges are placed apart from each other, far away from each other, then the force between them decreases. But with how much amount this force decreases, this is given by this particular equation number 2. Equation number 2 gives us the amount with which force increases or decreases with distance. For example, let us say we have two charges Q1 and Q2. Let us say they are kept at a distance r1, and let us say in this case when they are kept at distance r1, the force between them is F1. We have another situation here. We have taken both the charges same q1 and q2, but now the distance between them is changed. Let us say we have kept them at distance r2, where r2 is related to r1 by, let us say, twice of r1. Let us say the distance between both the charges having the same magnitude is doubled. Now let us say in this situation the force between the charges is F2. How is F1 and F2 related? F2 is how many times F1. This will be find out by equation number 2. Now F1 can be written as, by this equation number 1 we can write F1 as K Q1 Q2 divided by R1 square. And F2 can be written by using equation number 1 only. We can write F2 as K Q1 Q2 divided by R2 square. Here we have taken the same medium. Let us say uh, here the q1 and q2 are placed in air. In this case also they are placed in air only, so the medium is kept same. That is why the constant k is same here, but the distance is only changed. We are finding out the effect of distance on the force only. Hence all the other things are kept constant. The medium is kept constant and the magnitude of charges is also kept constant. Now we have to find out the relation between F1 and F2. Now we know that R2 is twice of R1. Let us put here. So it will be KQ1 Q2 divided by twice R1 whole square. So we can see that F2 is equal to K Q1 Q2 divided by 4 R1 square. Now K Q1 Q2 by R1 square is F1. So this is 1 by 4 F1. So we can say that F2 is 1/4 of F1. That means if we double the distance between both the charges, keeping all the other factors same, the force between both the charges will get 1/4, 1/4 of the original force. So this equation number 2 tells about how much force is decreased or increased by changing the distance between the charges. So this was all about the Coulomb's law. Now let us move towards the next topic. Our next topic is point charge. First of all, we will be discussing about what is a point charge. Point charge basically is a charge which is confined within a small space. A charge which is confined within a very small space is called point charge. For example, let us say we have a ball and its radius is 1 millimeter. Let us say we have a ball which is having a radius 1 millimeter and it is having a charge on it. Let us say like this. Now this ball is very small, hence the charge on it is confined in a very small space. That is why we can say that this charge is a point charge. Charge on this particular ball of radius 1 millimeter is confined within a small space. That is why it is a point charge. Now let us take another example. Let us say now we have a ball whose radius is 1 kilometer, and again we have a charge which is spread over its surface. In this case, can we call this charge on the ball a point charge? From the first look, it seems that it is not a point charge because it seems that it is not a point charge. Why? Because this charge is spread on a larger space. It is not confined within a small space. But it may act as a point charge. How? Now, let us say this particular ball is in the sky. Let us say we are the observer who is observing this particular charge, and this ball is in the sky. This observer is on earth and the ball is in sky. Now, because the distance between sky and earth is very large, this distance between sky and earth is very large. So, the charge on this ball will seem like to be confined in a small space to this observer on earth. When this particular ball of radius 1 kilometer is seen by an observer on earth and this ball is in the sky, then in that case this charge on the ball will seem to be confined within a very small space. In that case, this charge on the ball can be taken as a point charge. So here what we noticed is the definition of point charge largely depends upon the distance between observer and the charge. So when the distance between the observer and the ball is very large as compared to this radius of the ball, then this ball acts as a point charge. But if this ball is seen by an observer who is only 1 meter away from the ball, for this observer A, this particular charge on the ball is not a point charge. So basically, the definition of point charge is largely concerned with the distance between observer and the charge. Now we move towards the next topic, which is Coulomb's law in the vector form. Next topic is Coulomb's law in vector form. Now, what does that mean? In the previous case, we defined that the magnitude of force between the two charges is written as k q1 q2 by r square, where we had two charges plus q1 and plus q2, which were separated by a distance r. This was the magnitude of charge between both of them. Writing Coulomb's law in vector form means that we have to write this force between the two charges with direction, because force is a vector quantity. So we will be writing this force in the vector form. For that, we are considering, let us say, again a charge plus q1 and another charge plus q2, where the centers between both the charges are separated by distance, let us say r. And let us say this is the point A, this is the point B. We can see here that Q1 will exert force on Q2 in this particular direction, and force exerted by Q1 on Q2 is written as F21, while Q2 will also exert the same force on Q1 but in opposite direction, which is written as F12. We need to write the value of F12. What is F12 in vector form? This is what Coulomb's law in vector form implies. Now, we need to write the force in vector form. This force F12 vector, it is written like this: magnitude into direction. Why? Because whenever we have to write a vector, let us say we are having a vector B. To write this vector B, first of all, we need to write down the magnitude of B, and we will be multiplying it with its direction B cap. Then we can write full vector B. Similarly, to write down F12, first of all, we will be writing magnitude of F12, then its direction. First, let us discuss about magnitude. We know that between both the charges separated by distance r, the force F12, the magnitude of force F12 can be written like this: F, which is equal to k q1 q2 divided by r square, as we have noticed earlier. This is about the magnitude. Now, what about the direction? To write the direction, we use unit vector. Whenever we have to write the direction of the vector, whenever we have to represent the direction of a vector, let us say the vector B, the direction of vector B is represented by B cap. What is B cap? B cap is the unit vector in the direction of vector B. So here the direction of F12 means unit vector in the direction of F12. If we write the unit vector in the direction of F12, we will be representing the direction of F12. First of all, we are having two charges Q1 and Q2. We have 2 points A and B, and the distance between them is this. Let us say we have origin O here, and this point A has the position vector r1, while this point B has the position vector r2. So if this r1 is the position vector of point A, r2 is the position vector of point B, according to triangle law, we can find out this vector AB. We can have two vectors here, right? AB vector and BA vector. According to triangle law, we can write AB vector as R2 vector minus R1 vector, and BA vector is negative of AB vector. So we can write it as BA vector as minus R2 plus R1. From triangle law, we can say that using triangle law in this figure, we can say that r1 plus ab vector is equal to r2 vector. From here we can write that ab vector is equal to r2 minus r1. Similarly, we can have another vector from these 2 points, which is ab vector, which is r1 vector minus r2 vector. So here we have two types of vectors. First is ab vector. AB vector is r2 vector minus r1 vector, while we have b vector also, which is r1 vector minus r2 vector. Now why we are writing these two vectors? Because we need the direction of F12. F12 is in this direction, in this particular direction, and R1 minus R2 is also in the same direction. Here we can see that F12 is in this direction and R1 vector minus R2 vector is in this same direction. So if we have to represent the direction of F12, we can say that the unit vector representing F12 is same as the unit vector representing R1 minus R2, because both have the same direction. So here we can write that unit vector in the direction of F2 means it is same as the unit vector in the direction of r1 minus r2. So what is the unit vector in the direction of r1 minus r2? Unit vector in the direction of r1 minus r2 can be written like this, the cap of this. This can be written as r1 minus r2 divided by the magnitude of r1 minus r2. Why? Because from here we can see that the b cap, from this equation we can see that b cap is equal to b vector by magnitude of p. So the unit vector in a particular direction is written as vector divided by its magnitude. So same thing we have written here is that unit vector in the direction of r1 minus r2 is equal to vector divided by its magnitude. So the direction of f12 is basically r1 minus r2 divided by magnitude of r1 minus r2. So we can write both of this. Let us say this is equation number 3 and this magnitude is equation number 4. Using equation 3 and 4 in equation number 5, we can see that the F12 vector will become, it will become like this. Magnitude is k q1 q2 divided by r square into direction is r1 minus r2 vector divided by r1 minus r2 vector magnitude. Now here we have seen that this is charge q1, this is charge q2, both are separated by distance r, and we have seen that this vector ba vector is basically r1 minus r2 vector. If we think of r1 minus r2 vector magnitude of r1 minus vector r2 vector, that is, this is the length BA. What is the length BA? It is R. So we can write R1 minus R2 magnitude in place of R here. Using in place of R, the R1 minus R2 magnitude, we have F12 is equal to KQ1 Q2 divided by R1 vector minus R2 vector magnitude whole square into R1 vector minus R2 vector divided by R1 vector minus R2 vector magnitude. Rearranging all these terms, we can see that F12 is equal to K Q1 Q2 into R1 vector minus R2 vector divided by R1 vector minus R2 vector magnitude whole cube. So this is the Coulomb's law in vector form. In the similar manner, we can write down F21 also. F21 will be written as KQ1 Q2 divided by R2 minus R1 divided by R2 minus R1 magnitude whole cube. F21 will come out to be this one if we use the same process as we did F21. So this was the Coulomb's law in vector form. Now let us move towards the next topic. Now the next topic which we have is limitations of Coulomb's law. Limitations of Coulomb's law. What are the limitations of Coulomb's law? The first thing is that Coulomb's law is valid only for point charges. Coulomb's law is valid only for point charges. It is not valid for extended charges. Not valid for extended, or we can say that continuous charges. What are the continuous charges? We have discussed about the point charges, but about the continuous charges, let us say we have a wire and we have a charge spread on it like this. This particular charge, which is spread on a particular length, this is basically a continuous charge. Similarly, let us say we have a rectangular surface on which a charge is spread about. This is a rectangular surface. On its surface, the charge is spread about like this. This particular charge is also an example of continuous charge. So Coulomb's law can be applied only for point charges. Whenever the continuous charges are involved, we cannot use Coulomb's law to find out the force between those charges. Next thing is that the Coulomb's law is not valid when both the charges, if we are talking of two charges, when both the charges are in motion. When both the charges are in motion, then the Coulomb's law is not valid. It is valid, it can be applied only in two cases: when any one of the charge is at rest, or any one of the charges at rest, or both the charges are at rest. In these two conditions only, we can use Coulomb's law to find out the force between the charges. When both the charges are in motion, we cannot use Coulomb's law. Why? See, what we are dealing with is electrostatics. We are dealing Coulomb's law in the domain of electrostatics. In electrostatics, the condition is that the source charge should be always at rest, while the test charge can be at rest or it can be moving. But electrostatics means that the source charge must be at rest. Now, what is the source charge? See, whenever we have two or more charges, let us say we have two charges Q1 and Q2. Let us say Q1 is exerting some force on Q2. So the charge which is exerting the force is called the source charge, while the charge on which that the impact of force or the effect of force is seen, that is known as the test charge. This test charge can be at rest or moving, but this source charge should always be at rest if we are dealing with electrostatics. If this source charge also starts moving, then we enter in the domain of electrodynamics, where Coulomb's law is not applicable. So this was the limitation of Coulomb's law. Let us move towards the next topic. In the previous thing about Coulomb's law, we saw that the force between the two charges, let us say the charges were Q1 and Q2, and plus Q1 and plus Q2, distance between their centers was R. So force between both these charges was written as K Q1 Q2 by R square. This is the magnitude of force between these two charges. We said that here K is a constant which depends upon medium through this relation. K is equal to 1 upon 4 pi epsilon, where epsilon is known as the permittivity of the medium, right? So this is the topic which we are going to discuss, that is permittivity of medium. Will permittivity is a property of medium. Now here we can see that force can be written as, if we put this value of K in this expression number star, we can write this as force is equal to 1 by 4 pi epsilon Q1 Q2 by R square. From here we can see that force is inversely proportional to epsilon. As the permittivity of medium increases, the force between the charges decreases. And if we decrease the permittivity of the medium, then the force between the charges increases. They are inversely proportional. Now, what does permittivity physically means? Permittivity physically means, permittivity basically is a property of the medium through which this medium permits its own field to decrease the interaction force, or interaction field between the charges. What does it mean? Like we are having a medium, say water, in which both these charges are kept. So because both these charges are kept apart, from each other, they are separated by some distance, so they will exert some or the other force because they are having charges. So this water this water has a property through which it will permit it will allow its own field to decrease this force between the charges. If this water is having its own field, and this field will decrease the interaction force between the two charges. So this particular property of the medium is known as permittivity. Basically, for air or vacuum, or we can say that free space, we have a fixed value of permittivity, that is represented as epsilon naught, and this is 8.85 into 10 raised to power minus 12 coulomb square per newton meter square. Seen that the permittivity of every medium is greater than the permittivity of vacuum, which implies that the permittivity of vacuum is minimum. That means for vacuum or free space, the permittivity is minimum. That means the any medium will be having permittivity greater than that of vacuum. So because force is inversely proportional to the permittivity, from this equation number 2 and equation number 3, we can say that the medium force between charges in a medium is always less than force between the charges in air or vacuum, because force is inversely proportional to permittivity. If any medium is having permittivity greater than the vacuum, then the force between charges in that medium will be less than that in vacuum. So from here we can also say that the force between charges in vacuum is the maximum. That means if two charges are kept in air, then they will exert maximum force on each other. In any other medium, the force between charges will always decrease. So this is the concept of permittivity. Now every medium is having a different value of permittivity, but for each of the material we cannot learn the value of permittivity. So to make our calculations easy, to make our study easy, we have introduced a term which is known as relative permittivity. Relative permittivity helps us to find out permittivity of any medium if we know the permittivity of vacuum. How? Relative permittivity is defined as permittivity It is defined as permittivity of a medium with respect to air. Permittivity of a medium with respect to air. Relative permittivity is written as epsilon r, and it is given as epsilon m by epsilon naught, where epsilon naught is the permittivity of free space or air, and epsilon m is the permittivity of medium, and epsilon r is the relative permittivity. So relative permittivity basically tells us that the permittivity of medium is how many times greater than the permittivity of free space, because we know that permittivity of every medium will be greater than the permittivity of free space, and how many times the permittivity of this medium is greater than the epsilon naught, this is told to us by this epsilon r, that is relative permittivity. For example, let us say epsilon r for water is 81. Let us say for water the relative permittivity is 81. This will imply that the permittivity of water divided by permittivity of free space is equal to 81. This implies permittivity of water is equal to 81 times permittivity of epsilon naught. So we need not remember the value of permittivity of water. We just need to find out what is the epsilon r, what is the relativity or relative permittivity in case of water. From this relation only, this relation number hash, we can find out permittivity of any medium if we know relative permittivity of that medium. Epsilon m by epsilon naught is equal to epsilon r, then from here we can write down that f naught by fm is equal to epsilon r. How? Because force is inversely proportional to permittivity. See, let us say force in vacuum is equal to K Q1 Q2 divided by R square. In air, let us say we were having two charges Q1 and Q2 separated by some distance R. So Force between these two charges is represented as F naught in air. If we put these charges in water, let us say we put these charges in water with the same magnitude and the same separation between them, then the force between the two charges will change as medium changes. So force in water will be equal to K prime Q1 Q2 divided by R square. So here F naught can be written as 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught Q1 Q2 by R square, because here we have put the value of K. Now similarly in terms of K we can write Fw as K prime, that is 1 by 4 pi epsilon m. Let us say permittivity of water is epsilon m, permittivity of air is epsilon naught. So this will be Q1 Q2 by R square. Now, if we divide both these equations, this is first equation and this is, let us say, second equation. If we divide both of these, F naught by Fw, we will see that we will be having 1 by epsilon naught divided by 1 by epsilon m, that is epsilon m by epsilon naught, which is epsilon r. So, F naught is equal to epsilon r times force in the medium. So this is the relation between force in vacuum and force between charges in the medium if the magnitude of charges is kept same and their separation is kept same. And about the permittivities, epsilon m will be equal to epsilon naught into epsilon r. So this was all about the concept of permittivity. Class, first of all, we discussed about the charge. Then we discussed about what is Coulomb's law. After Coulomb's law, we studied about Coulomb's law in vector form. Then we studied about the limitations of Coulomb's law. And at the end, we discussed about the permittivity of medium. So this was all about today's class. Thank you. Have a nice day ahead.